If someone had told me last week that a simple Ouija board session would unravel everything I thought I knew, I'd have laughed. But here I am, writing this while my hands shake, hoping to process what happened. Here's the setup. I live in a city notorious for its creepy urban legends and unexplained deaths. Weird stuff is just part of life here. For most, it's a reason to leave as soon as they can. But my friends and I? We thrive on it. Haunted cemeteries, abandoned buildings, spooky woods. These are our playgrounds. So when Kayla, the thrill seeker of our group, suggested we try a Ouija board, we jumped at the idea. But we weren't going to try it in some cozy attic or a suburban living room. Too basic. No, we picked the treehouse. The treehouse was a relic of the city's past, perched high in the woods on the outskirts. It belonged to someone who vanished decades ago, and locals whispered that it was cursed. For us, that just made it perfect. That's how Kayla, Jordan, Sam, and I ended up there last night, under a starless sky, with flickering candles and a dusty Ouija board between us. We weren't taking it seriously at first. Breaking every rule, we laughed and joked as we asked typical questions. Is there a spirit here? What's your name? What year did you die? Nothing happened. After half an hour of dead silence, we gave up and started swapping ghost stories instead. I left the Ouija board on the floor, thinking the night would end as just another spooky hangout. But as the others grabbed snacks and laughed about Kayla's story, something tugged at me. I picked up the board again, placing my fingers on the planchette. Will you speak to me? I whispered. It moved. I froze as the planchette spelled out, yes. Guys, it's working, I shouted. The others rushed over, their faces a mix of skepticism and excitement. We all placed our hands on the board. Jordan asked, "Where are you from?" Nothing. The planchette sat still, as if refusing to answer with all of us there. I had a thought. Let's try going solo, I suggested. Kayla volunteered. Alone with the board, she asked, "Where are you from?" The planchette jerked under her fingers, spelling, "Not important." Spicy ghost, Sam joked, trying to ease the tension. Curious, I decided to go next. Why do you only answer when we're alone? I asked. The board spelled, "One at a time." A chill ran through me. What do you want? Tell the others to leave. My friends hesitated but eventually climbed down from the treehouse, leaving me alone in the flickering candlelight. I placed my hands on the planchette again. Why are you here? To know you. What does that mean? I asked, my voice trembling. What scares you most? I hesitated before whispering, losing my sister. The planchette paused, then spelled, "Thank you. Send Jordan." I climbed down and told Jordan it was his turn. He reluctantly went up, and after 15 minutes, he returned looking pale. It just kept asking me questions, he muttered. Weird stuff like my happiest memory or who I trust the least. Maybe it's studying us, Sam suggested nervously. Next was Sam's turn. He came back visibly shaken. It got mad when I didn't answer fast enough, he said, and when I lied, it spelled, "Do not lie." Now it was Kayla's turn, but she didn't last long. After only a few minutes, she climbed down, trembling. We need to leave, she said, grabbing her bag. What happened? I asked. It doesn't matter, she snapped. We just need to go. Now. Jordan and Sam didn't argue. They grabbed their things and headed toward the forest. Are you coming? Kayla asked me. No, I said firmly. Not yet. I couldn't leave. This was what I'd been waiting for. A real, undeniable supernatural experience. Alone again, I climbed back into the treehouse and placed my fingers on the planchette. Why are you asking us these questions? The answer came slowly. To confirm. Confirm what? One of you is not who they claim to be. The words sent a shiver down my spine. What do you mean? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the forest below. It was Kayla. I jumped up, but the planchette moved on its own, faster than ever. That is not Kayla. Run. Panicking, I scrambled down the ladder, my heart pounding. Jordan and Sam were running toward me, their faces pale with terror. Where's Kayla? I yelled. That's not Kayla, Jordan shouted back. She changed. Her eyes, they weren't hers. A rustling sound came from the trees behind them. Something was moving, fast. "Run!" Sam screamed. We bolted through the forest, branches whipping our faces. Behind us, I heard heavy footsteps and low, guttural growls. We didn't stop until we reached the edge of the woods, where the streetlights of the city glowed faintly. Breathless, we turned to look back. The forest was dark and silent. "Where's Kayla?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Jordan shook his head. "That wasn't her. I don't know what it was, but she's gone." Sam stared at me, his eyes wide. Do you think the board knew? Is that why it asked all those questions?" I didn't answer. The city we live in is known for its hauntings. But I don't think it's the dead we need to fear. Whatever was in that treehouse knew us too well. And whatever came out of those woods wasn't Kayla. Now every time I look over my shoulder, I wonder if it is still following us. And I can't stop wondering. If I'd stayed longer, would it have taken me too? It was a freezing November night when I decided to take a shortcut through the back roads on my way home from work. I was exhausted and wanted to get home as quickly as possible. The back roads were poorly lit with nothing but trees and darkness on either side, but I didn't mind. I'd driven them dozens of times before. The night was unnervingly quiet. Even with my windows rolled up, the silence pressed against the car, broken only by the hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel beneath my tires. I turned up the radio to drown out the unease, but the static felt more oppressive than comforting. After a while, I gave up and switched it off. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed a figure standing by the side of the road, their thumb outstretched. They were wearing a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured most of their face. Normally, I would have kept driving, especially at that hour, but something about them made me hesitate. Their posture was odd, almost too still, as if they weren't waiting but expecting. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the passenger window. "Where are you headed?" I asked, my voice unnaturally loud in the silence. "Just up ahead," they replied, their voice low and raspy, barely audible over the sound of the idling engine. I hesitated, glancing down the empty road. There was nothing just up ahead for at least 5 miles. Still, I unlocked the door, and they climbed in without another word. As soon as they sat down, I regretted it. The air in the car grew colder, and an unsettling smell filled the space. Earthy, like damp soil, mixed with something faintly metallic. I glanced at them out of the corner of my eye. They were staring straight ahead, their face hidden in the shadow of their hat. The way they sat was unnatural, too stiff, like a mannequin propped up in the seat. I tried to shake off my discomfort and focused on the road, but the silence between us was suffocating. After a few minutes, I decided to break the tension. "So, where are you coming from?" I asked, forcing a casual tone. No response. "Heading home or—" My voice trailed off when I realized they weren't listening, or if they were, they didn't care to answer. The only sound was their breathing, slow and heavy, like the wheezing of an old bellows. It seemed to grow louder with every mile, drowning out the engine. Just as I was about to ask again, they spoke. "Turn left here." I frowned. There was no left turn, just more road disappearing into the darkness. "What do you mean? There's nowhere to go." "Turn left," they repeated, their voice sharper this time, more forceful. A chill ran down my spine. "I'm just going to keep going straight," I said firmly, gripping the wheel tighter. My knuckles were white, and the steering wheel felt icy under my hands. That's when I noticed something in the rearview mirror. The passenger wasn't sitting still anymore. They were shifting, their body convulsing slightly like they were struggling to stay solid. Their coat rippled unnaturally, as if something underneath was moving. My stomach twisted. "Pull over," they growled, their voice distorted, almost inhuman. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt. My breathing was shallow and ragged as I turned to look at them, heart pounding in my chest. The passenger seat was empty. The smell of damp soil lingered, stronger now, and I noticed muddy footprints trailing across the floor. I blinked, my mind racing. The door hadn't opened. How could they have gotten out? I didn't wait to find out. Slamming the car into gear, I floored it the rest of the way home, barely daring to glance in the mirrors. Every shadow along the roadside felt like it was watching me. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. I stumbled into the house, locked the doors, and spent the rest of the night pacing the living room, jumping at every creak and groan. When I finally managed to sleep, it was fitful and plagued by dreams of shadowy figures and cold, suffocating air. The next morning, I forced myself to go out and check the car. At first glance, everything seemed normal. No footprints, no lingering smell. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But when I stepped around to the back, my blood ran cold. There, on the fogged-up back window, was a single wet handprint, too large and distorted to be human. For weeks after that night, I avoided the back roads entirely. I told myself it was just paranoia, that I was being foolish, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every night, I triple-checked the locks, peered out the windows, and tried to ignore the faint sensation of being watched. Then, one evening, as I was leaving work late, I saw it again. The figure. Standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched, the same coat, the same wide-brimmed hat. My stomach churned. This time I didn't slow down. I sped past them, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly they ached. In the rearview mirror, I saw them lower their arm and take a step into the road. But when I glanced back again, they were gone. I didn't make it home that night. Halfway there, my engine sputtered and died, stranding me on an empty stretch of highway. As I sat there trying to call for help, a chill seeped into the car. The air grew heavy, suffocating, and the smell of damp soil filled my nostrils. And then from the back seat a voice whispered, "I told you to turn left." In the quiet town of Maplewood, Ohio, I, David, a high school teacher, found solace in my evening walks through the familiar streets. The routine was a comforting end to my day, a time to reflect and unwind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the streetlights flickered to life, I noticed a figure standing at the end of a dimly lit alley. The person wore a long coat, the collar turned up to obscure their face. Despite the warmth of the evening, a chill ran down my spine. I quickened my pace, eager to reach the safety of my home. The next night I chose a different route, hoping to avoid the unsettling encounter. However, as I turned a corner, I saw the same figure standing under a flickering street lamp. An inexplicable sense of dread filled me. I hurried past, avoiding eye contact, and didn't look back until I was safely inside. Over the following days, the figure appeared more frequently, always at a distance, always watching. I confided in my friend Mark, who suggested it might be a prank or someone seeking attention. Determined to confront my fear, I decided to approach the figure the next time we met. That night, as I walked through the neighborhood, I saw the figure near a deserted park. Summoning my courage, I approached and called out, "Who are you? Why are you following me?" The figure remained silent, the collar still obscuring their face. I reached out to touch their shoulder, but my hand passed through empty air. The figure vanished, leaving me standing alone, my heart pounding. Disturbed and unable to sleep, I researched local legends and discovered tales of a shadow man, a spirit said to appear to those who had wronged others, serving as a harbinger of misfortune. I couldn't recall any recent transgressions, but couldn't shake the feeling that I was being warned. The sightings continued, each encounter leaving me more anxious and sleep-deprived. I sought the counsel of an elderly pastor who advised me to seek forgiveness for any past wrongs and to pray for protection. I followed his advice diligently, hoping for relief. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I decided to take a different route home, passing by an old abandoned house. As I walked past, I heard a faint whisper calling my name. I turned to see the cloaked figure standing inside the house's courtyard, beckoning me. Against my better judgment, I felt compelled to follow. Entering the courtyard, I was enveloped in darkness. The air was thick, and the silence was oppressive. The figure stood at the center, its collar now lowered to reveal a face identical to mine. Paralyzed with fear, I watched as the figure spoke in my own voice. "You cannot escape your past." Memories flooded my mind. An accident from years ago, a hit and run that I had buried deep within my conscience. The victim's face, the guilt, the fear of being caught, all came rushing back. The figure stepped closer, merging with me, and I felt a coldness seep into my very soul. The next morning, I was found wandering the streets, disoriented and muttering to myself. I was taken to a local hospital, where I remained unresponsive, trapped in a catatonic state. The doctors were baffled, unable to diagnose my condition. To this day, the residents of Maplewood speak in hushed tones about me, the man who was haunted by his own guilt, a reminder that the past can never truly be left behind.